Hi everyone, it's Tox from CritsHappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. We're here with another Critical Strike where we take 3 games, put them through short 5-minute reviews, and let you know if they're crits, hits, or misses. Today we have 3 very different games. First, we're going to take a look at a deck building game called Empires of Zidal, which was on Kickstarter. It's a little readily available right now from Dog Breath Games. This is going to involve gems and different workers and evolving your cards and some new things that you may not have seen before in a deck building game. Then we're going to look at Scripts and Scribes from Dr. Finn Games. This is a dice game designed where you are trying to improve the monastery that you and your fellow opponents live in. And then we're going to look at Jungle Ascent, which is all about being dastardly and devilishly, making sure that you reach the top of this perilous cliff and obtain all this treasure while ensuring your opponents don't get anywhere near it. That's from 5th Street Games. So come with me. Grab your gems, grab your dice, and grab your rope bridges, and let's jump in to Critical Strikes. So this is Empires of Zidal from Dog Breath Games. This is a 2 to 4 player deck building game that brings some things to a deck building game you've probably never seen before, and in a very good way, I might add. To give you a quick rundown of everything you're seeing in front of you, because this is a gigantic setup, you have a resource market down here. There's 5 main resources. There are rubies, there are sapphires, there are emeralds, there are topazes, and there are amethysts. There is also a earth portion up here where you have more of them down in like a reserve, but this is where you're going to be buying and trading some of your resources from throughout the game. You're also going to have characters that will let you go mine these specific type of gems that are going to be in your starting deck, and you'll take those from up here. Now the name of the game is getting signets, which are up here. There are 5 different signets that match up to each of the 5 different colors, and as you may guess, there's 5 different factions of workers that match up with the colors as well. Over here you have the building market. Now in 2, 3, and 4 player games there's different amounts of cards that are used. So as you can see right here, there are a lot more cards that come with the game. This is set up just for a 2-player game right now. But over here in the building market, you'll see 5 different building stacks that you can build from when it's your turn to play cards. The resource cost to build buildings is in the upper left, and what you get when you build the buildings is in the text field. The same thing happens on the worker market with the workers. Once you've acquired a worker, you have to spend the costs and resources up here, and then you gain their ability whenever you play them in the future. However, you don't just go out and buy the best workers. You don't just go out and buy workers at all. Your starting deck actually consists of 9 cards. Now 9 sounds kind of weird. You get 1 of each type of miner. So for instance, this ruby prospector, when I play her, I would get 2 rubies from the earth. If I played the sapphire digger, I would get 2 sapphires from the earth. There's also 2 silver workers, which are going to give me 10 silver each, which is the primary money resource in the game. But then I have 2 children, and you'll notice that they say may be trained to become any worker. So essentially what happens is you're going to get a 10th card by randomly picking one of the workers and either choosing to discard it and get its resources at the beginning of the game and starting with 9 cards, or having it be part of your deck. So let's say that I had gone ahead and said, you know what, I got a worker but I discarded it, and it gave me, let's say, 1 ruby and 2 sapphires and a topaz as my resources. I would keep those in front of me to show that I have those to play. Then on my turn I would shuffle my deck and I would deal out my hand. I would get 5 cards, so I would immediately have in my hand the ability to get 20 silver, 2 amethysts, and 2 topaz. From there, I could then upgrade my worker. And what that involves is taking my child, putting him onto the child stack, paying the resources of whatever character I would want to take and upgrade him to. So in this case, if I wanted to get the Jester, which gives me 2 different options when I play him, I would have to spend 1 emerald, 2 amethyst, and 4 silver. And if I had that, I could get him and upgrade him. Now that makes a big difference in this game because you have to have a child to upgrade to a worker. If you don't have children, then you can't upgrade and get get a worker, even if you have the resources. So at the end of every turn, you have to actually take back a child if there is a child in the child stack. So if you notice at the beginning of the game, I was saying that we each had 2 child cards in our starting deck. There were more child cards starting out there as well. So over the course of time, what's going to happen is, in this world, you're going to be gaining children that you develop into workers, and then using their worker abilities to play, get more resources, draw more cards, build more buildings, and get more signets. Now, the one thing that I've heard people complain about with this game is that it's long, and it can be long. There are a lot of signets in the game, and the way that the game ends is when one of the piles of signets is out. So we just pretty much realized that you can make a shorter game by taking out several of the signets. There's an equal number of signets per faction, so if you just take out a certain amount per faction, you can shorten the game or lengthen the game to as much as you want. The other thing that I thought was very interesting is they have a thing called active duty. And what that means is there are some cards, like this one for example, the Mason. He says that when you play him, while active from 2, which I'll explain in a second, once per turn you may alter the construction cost of a building by reducing 3 gems of your choice or adding 10 silver to an opponent. So what this means with active, you'll see that there's these little areas down here that say active duty around the board. There's 6 of them around the board, so wherever you're sitting there's going to be a place for a 2- and 4-player game. You would put this person on the active number they say they start from. So while active from 2. So when I play him, I would put him on 2. Now what that means is every turn at the beginning of my phase, I'm going to move all of my active cards down 1. If they're on 1, they get removed and go to my discard pile and shuffle back in. So very much like on a countdown clock, these are going to come out, stay in play, and give you an ability to keep using turn after turn until they move all the way through their active duty and go back to your discard pile. There are quite a bit of combinations inside of Empires of Zidal. I thought at first that having all of these resources to manage would be really painful, because with your money you can go through and buy from the resource market. So this will be diminished over time, and what that means is, like, if this was the setup right now, I could buy a ruby for 7. I could sell a ruby and get 6, and then I could use that 6 to buy this sapphire if I needed. So there's a lot of cajoling and manipulating of this resource market, and if you do it well, it can become very, very impactful to you later in the game. And that's really what Empires of Zidal is all about. We have found it to be very fun manipulating the resources, upgrading our workers, and working them together with the right buildings to make a really, really powerful late game clincher and get all the signets you can get, finish out the game. Now, of course, just because you take the last signet does not mean you win. It's the person who has the most signets. But if you play and design your deck correctly, you will get rewarded very well for that. And I really enjoyed that about this game. The artwork is beautiful. I think the concepts are very unique and very different, and we have had quite a bit of fun with Empires of Zidal. So much so, we're going to give it a very high hit rating from critshappen.com. Next up is Scripts and Scribes, the dice game from Dr. Finn's Games. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk to me about Biblios. I have never played Biblios. I need to. I know I need to, and I don't know much about it. But I'm not going to talk about that game, even though Dr. Finn had a piece of that. This is Scripts and Scribes. Scripts and Scribes is a very small, as you can see, dice game designed where you have different tracks of influence, including the Abbot, inside of an abbey. Now, each player has cubes. We have a 3-player setup here. You'll see there's spots for 2, 3, 4, and 5 players. If we were playing a 2-player game, then our cubes would start down here, but we're going to play a 3-player game real quickly, and they're going to start up here. And then at the top of each track, you're also going to see influence dice, and they all start on 3. There are also money cards that are going to be part of your hand. There are a couple of different ways to play where you can have a hand limitation or not have a hand limitation, depending on how challenging you want to make it. But the most important thing about this game are these 7 influence dice. These dice are going to get rolled at the beginning of the turn. So let's say I'm the first player and I roll these dice. I now leave them alone and I don't touch them. The first thing that I'm going to do is look at what the gold die is, and depending on what the gold die comes up with is going to determine the type of turn you take. There are 4 different options. The first is a standard turn. Now remember, this is on the dice, so we'll talk about that in a second. This is a gold symbol for 3, for 2, and for 1. So half the die allows you to take a standard turn if that gold symbol shows up. The 2 dice that we got is a reroll turn. We'll talk about that as a reroll option as well. The third type of turn is the gavel, which is an auction for resources. And then the 4th type is an auction for gold, which is the money bag. Let's first talk about the generic regular turn, the standard turn. So on this one, the active player takes 1 type of dice and performs a required action. Moving clockwise, players will take dice and perform actions, and the actions will depend on the chosen dice. What that means is, on a normal turn, I would go first and I would draft dice. Now the key is this: when you draft dice, you have to pick a symbol and take all of that symbol. So if I wanted to take this book, I could take that book, and if I was the green player, move myself up 1 track on the book. The other option, though, is I could say I want to take both of the scroll dice and move my character up 2 on the scroll chart. Now what that means is you're trying to push higher to get to these gold symbols. If you're the first person to reach one of these levels, then you get 2 gold here. If you're the second person, you get 1 gold. Now as you can imagine, the higher up you are, the further in first place you are on that track. If we were tied next to each other here, the green shows to be the first player because they're furthest up and furthest left, and then blue is second and red is below. So you can see really easily as things get moving up who is higher up than who, and if they're next to each other, who's gotten there first, because you always put the next player to get there on the right. Why do I want to be higher up a track? Well, the reason is this. This die, for example, has a plus plus, a plus minus, a plus, a minus. If I drafted this plus plus die instead of these the 2 scrolls, I could draft the plus plus die, and I could take 2 dice and move them up in value. So from a 3 to a 4 and from a 3 to a 4. The reason I would want to do that is at the end of the game, whoever is highest on the track is going to get 3 times the point value of that die in gold. The second person that's highest up that track is also going to get gold as well, but they'll only get 1 times the value of that die in gold. So my choices are very simple. Each of these symbols align up to one of the symbols at the bottom of the track. So 2 scrolls moves me up to here. Then the blue player would go, and let's say they chose 2 for the Abbot. They would move up 2 on the Abbot track. Let's say the red player went, they chose the book and moved up 1 on the book. And then the, let's say the next player chose the gold. They would take the gold and take 1 gold into their hand. And then the final player could take that plus plus and move up whatever he wanted to move up. So let's say that was the red player. Say he chose 4 there and 4 there. Then we would shift and give these to the next player. They would roll the dice, and they would then take the type of turn that they get from the dice roll. Now, again, you don't touch any of them once they've been rolled. You leave them alone. But for example, now we have the reroll option. The reroll option lets the active player reroll 1 or more of the dice. They must pay gold for each reroll, though. The first reroll will cost 1 gold, and subsequent rerolls cost the amount of the previous roll plus 1 gold. So it gives that person an option to say, okay, you know what? I think I don't like this, so I want to reroll this, 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 and this, and I'll reroll all of those, and now we're with this. Now I can keep rerolling if I want, but I would have to keep paying for that. So there's a lot of different things that you could choose from a strategic position to do depending on what type of dice you want to get. Now let's talk a little bit about the auction turn, which is the gavel. This is my favorite type of turn. So in no particular order, everyone is going to take their gold that they have in their hands and begin to put a bid together by placing cards face down in front of them. The person with the highest bid is going to win and gets to perform actions. All the other bidders return their gold to their hands, and the active player will re-roll the game dice. That is gigantic, because what happens is the player who wins this bid takes all of these dice. So if I was the red player and I won this bid with, let's say, 7 gold, I would move up to here, 1 here, 1 on the black, I would move up 1 on the Abbot, and then I could minus 2. So if I wasn't winning in some of these, I could say I'm going to move this down to a 2 and move this down to a 2. So I could do things like that. Now the key is that whoever's turn this was is going to stay the first player, and they're going to re-roll their dice again. So even though you may have not been able to pick as the first player, you're going to get a chance to do that again. And then finally, there is the auction for gold, which is the final option, which is the gold bag. So when this one, the active player is going to start an auction by bidding or passing, and then bidding is going to proceed clockwise around the table. So obviously every bid has to be higher than the last, but the winning bidder is going to remove any one token from a resource track and take the bid amount of gold from the supply in exchange for the token. Now you may ask yourself, wait a minute, why do I want to remove one of my tokens from a track? Well, let's say it's later in the game, and let's say green and blue have flown up this track, and I'm nowhere near as the red player of winning this. I could use this gold auction to dump this character and get 10 gold. And the name of the game is getting gold. The person with the most gold wins. So if you see yourself losing in one resource, you could potentially use that gold auction as a way of sacrificing that resource and gaining the 10 gold back. There's going to be a lot of different options throughout the game, and a big key of it is drafting what you need and also drafting based on the reactions of what your opponents have drafted from these dice as well. But Scripts and Scribes is a very quick and easy game to learn. Once you understand the 4 different types of turns you can take, and understanding that each of these symbols aligns to pushing your cubes up these rows, it becomes extremely simple to manage and what you want to do. The challenge is, of course, getting the dice rolls that you want, making sure your cubes are ahead of everyone else's, and making sure that you pump up the resource or the value dice at the top of each column to make sure that you get as much points as possible at the end of the game. Now real quickly, the Abbot Track. You may be asking yourself, there's no dice at the top of the Abbot Track. And that's true, but you'll notice that the gold is easier to get to. You'll notice that the 2 and the 1, the 4 and the 2, and the 5 and the 3 are 1 rung lower. And there's a 7 at the very top as well. Influencing the Abbot can be very, very beneficial to you at the end of the game. Now, the game is going to end when a couple of different things could happen. Either any one token reaches the top space on the Abbot Track. So if anybody gets to the top here, that's going to trigger the end of the game. If any 3 tokens reach the top space of 1 or more resource tracks, so if we have, let's say, the red, the blue, and the orange, somebody's reached the top of those 3 tracks, that could end the game as well. Or any one player has removed 4 of their tokens from the gold auction action. So if these guys were just flying up these things here and they were leaving me in the dust, but I had removed all 4 of these tokens, I know I'm going to have 40 gold from doing this, but then I will have had any other number of gold that I would have gotten to throughout the game as well, and potentially could still sneak in and take a win out if I could be able to pull that off. Overall, Scripts and Scribes has been very, very fun. It's good with 2 players. It's great with 5 players. We've enjoyed it predominantly with 3. We feel that's the right sweet spot for this game, but it's small enough and portable enough to take around with you almost anywhere you go. It's been one of my favorite dice games that we've been playing over the recent couple of months, and we've been keeping it in our back pockets and our backpacks as well. So I would highly recommend to check it out. We're going to give it a hit from critshappen.com, and we hope that you check it out as well. So here we are with Jungle Ascent, our last game. This is from 5th Street Games, who is best known for Farmageddon. This was a Kickstarter last year and was successful, and now is available on store shelves. Jungle Ascent is a lot of fun. It is a game that you want to play with the right game group, because the object is to get your character from the bottom of this hill to the top of this hill where there's all this treasure and be the first person to get there. However, you're going to be messing with your opponents quite a bit in this game. Now, the first thing to know is you're going to be playing pathway cards. So for example, this is a rope ladder that can only be placed vertically, and it takes 1 action. So on my turn, I have 2 actions. I'm going to start with 5 cards. I could place this as a red player right here. Now as another action, I could take a move, and I could move onto my rope bridge right here as well if I wanted to. However, if I placed it, let's say, here, The blue player could go next and immediately take 2 blue move actions and move on to my rope bridge. Just because I play a card doesn't mean that I'm the only one that's going to be able to play it. Now there's some cards, like the rope bridge here. The rope ladder is going to go up and down. The rope bridge is going to go vertically, or excuse me, horizontally here. So as you move up, you can move over as well. Now, as you can imagine, there's also moving platforms in this game. For example, here's one that has 2 ups. What that means is that if I were to move onto that platform, I could move up. Now, immediately you'll notice that it takes 1 action and can be placed either vertically or horizontally. So I could put it this way or I could put it this way. But what it means is no matter what I do, once I step onto that, I'm immediately pushed up for free and I don't have to use a move action to move up. The moving pathways are really popular ways to be able to get around this environment. But there is also going to be some really nasty things that could happen to you as well. There are some action cards. For example, a thief is a free action that says randomly take 1 card from an opponent's hand. You have the Major Trouble Trap. Immediately move all hazards in play in any order. And what could be a hazard? Well, how about a moving fireball? A moving fireball gets placed, and each turn it moves up 1. So if I was the green player and I put this here, I would put my token on it to show that it's a hazard token that I control. And at the beginning of my turn, any hazards I control are going to activate. This says when activated, move the fireball up 1 square and discard all cards it moves onto. So this is going to slowly be creeping its way up, and if it hits this one, it's going to destroy it, and this guy will fall all the way back to the bottom. So there's a lot that you can do in very Donkey Kong-like style to mess with your opponents and have them falling back down to the bottom. It's a very fast-paced game. The cards are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the artwork is really good on them. The characters are really funny. The attitude of the game is very lighthearted. It is kind of a mess with your neighbor type thing, but again, the whole object is to build enough pathways to get you to the very top of this little tiny cliff and make sure that you get all the way up here and reach the treasure. If you can be the first person, you win the game. The thing that I really like about Jungle Ascent is it's simple to teach. We have played with as young as our 5-year-old and they get it. We have to help them sometimes with the hazards, but the strategies of moving up is very simple. It's also very lighthearted and tongue-in-cheek with a lot of the artwork and a lot of the actions, so while it is a little bit of mess with your neighbor, there's not so much that people are going to get into too many arguments in this game. Because of the key thing, it's a quick game. We can play a 4-player game in about 15 minutes, which is really fun. It's great as a filler or something you can play multiple times in the night. This is something I'd recommend to gamers and to gamers with children. I think this is a great family game. I think it's a really colorful, very fun and exciting adventure type game, and something I'd recommend to most gamers, if not all gamers, that have kids in the house that they're looking to play with. So Jungle Ascent is going to get a hit from Crits Happen. So that's Critical Strikes. 3 very good games, 3 games we would all recommend, and 3 games that all get hits. Empires of Zidal is, again, a really high hit. It brings some really interesting, neat things to the deck building genre, and blew me away that you can have that many resources and still enjoy managing them, upgrading your cards, changing your workers, and doing it in a way that really pulls off some nice strategies. Scripts and Scribes has been one of my favorite smaller games that we've been playing recently. It has been a lot of fun, very simple to teach, very easy to port around. I mean, it's a very tiny box, so it's not too hard to put into a backpack and take with you. And even if you take it out of the box, it's, again, easily portable as well. But a lot of fun with this one. Very simple to teach to almost anyone, and people pick it up and get moving with the strategies really well. And then Jungle Ascent is just pure hilarity and pure fun. You're always at this moment where you think you're at the top of that hill and you know what's going to happen, and then somebody plays some kind of dastardly device and down you go. And it provides a lot of fun for both gamers and for family gamers. So, Empires of Zidal, Scripts and Scribes dice game, and Jungle Ascent, all get hits from Crits Happen. We hope that you enjoyed this Critical Strike. We'd love to hear from you. Leave your comments below on the YouTube channel. Of course, you can chime in on Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, or you can find us at our homepage at critshappen.com. Until we see you next time, we hope you enjoy all of your gem mining, all of your dice rolling, and all of your hill climbing inside of these and your games. Thanks so much for watching. Keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.